Hi and welcome. Today we're going to dive into Urolithin A postbiotic revolution in mitochondrial health. My name is Dr. Arianne Missimer. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, doctor of physical therapy, registered dietitian, owner of the Movement Paradigm Integrative Health Center, and I'm a medical educator for Rupa Health. I'm super excited to talk about this really intriguing topic with you today. So we're going to talk about the science of Urolithin A and its role as a postbiotic that is derived from the gut microbiome and its unique mechanisms in the areas of mitophagy. We're going to review some of the clinical evidence and such key findings in the Atlas trial, demonstrating its impact on mitochondrial function, muscle health, and inflammation. We're going to talk about how we can integrate this into functional medicine. What are some of the labs that we can use to be able to test for it and to be able to understand it in a little bit more depth, review a case study, and ultimately help you to bridge all of this together and be able to integrate it into your practice to improve gut health and overall longevity. So why is mitochondrial health so important? 90% of our cellular energy is produced by the mitochondria. So it is our cellular powerhouse. The trillions of cells that comprise our body's tissues literally run on the energy created by them. So healthy cells are going to rely on healthy mitochondria. Their optimal function leads to incredible health benefits and is particularly essential to our heart, kidney, eye, brain, skin, and muscle function. And the clinical science to date has shown a huge focus on muscle health, as muscle cells have a very large amount of mitochondria, and on skin health, which is the largest organ of our body. So what exactly is urolithin A? So it is a postbiotic metabolite that's produced by the gut bacteria from oligotannins and oleic acid. It's found in foods such as pomegranates, nuts, and berries, specifically raspberries. And its conversion depends on the gut microbiome specifically. So 30 to 40% of people produce it naturally, and the rest, unfortunately, do not. So from a functional medicine perspective, this can really link to mitochondrial health, energy production, and cellular aging. It's supporting mitophagy, which is essentially that clearing of our damaged mitochondria for renewal. And it can be very promising in targeting the age-related decline that we all experience. So let's kind of dive into mitophagy. So it's essentially your body's deep clean to keep your cells energized and functioning properly. So what is our mitochondria? It's essentially the power plant of our cells, producing energy to keep our body running. And over time, these little tiny powerhouses can unfortunately get worn out. They can get damaged. And so what is mitophagy? Essentially, it's the process your body is going to use to find and recycle these older damaged mitochondria. Think of it as a cellular cleaning crew that comes in and removes the broken power plants and replaces them with new efficient ones. So why is this so important? Because damaged mitochondria can cause a whole host of issues, including creating harmful byproducts like toxic smoke from a broken power plant, for example. By clearing out the bad ones, mitophagy can ultimately keep our cells healthy and efficient. It can keep us feeling energized, reduce the risk of disease, relate, and all the things that are associated with aging. So how does it work? Essentially, our cells are going to identify this damaged mitochondrion. And then these specialized structures called lysosomes, which are going to be the recyclers, surround it. And then the damaged mitochondrion is broken down into these raw materials that can ultimately be used to build new mitochondria. So if we don't have this process, if the cleaning process doesn't happen, it doesn't happen well, these damaged mitochondria continue to pile up and it reduces energy production, potentially causing more cell damage. What happens in this case is this is where we have mitochondrial dysfunction. This can result in a whole host of chronic health issues, but just to name a few: chronic pain, neurodegenerative diseases, chronic fatigue, neurological type conditions and symptoms. So mitophagy is ultimately crucial for keeping our cells healthy and, of course, therefore our entire body, just like a well-oiled machine. So now getting back to urolithin A, how does this work? So it's going to promote mitophagy, so that removal of the dysfunctional mitochondria. It's going to enhance mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the creation of the new mitochondria. It can help to reduce inflammation, so it's modulating inflammatory pathways, and it can have potential epigenetic effects by influencing gene expression. So we're going to dive into these a little bit more. So as it relates to promoting mitophagy specifically, so essentially what's going to happen is urolithin A is going to activate the mitophagy pathway by upregulating specific cellular signals that identify and clear out these damaged mitochondria. So we already talked about that. It can enhance the activity of key proteins like PINK1 and parkin, which are going to tag dysfunctional mitochondria and influence the degradation of those. It also can ensure efficient removal of damaged mitochondria via autophagosomes, which are going to fuse with lysosomes to recycle these mitochondrial components. Additionally, so some of the preclinical studies in rodents and C. elegans, which is essentially a small transparent roundworm that's used often as an organism in biological research, has demonstrated that urolithin A can significantly increase mitophagy, leading to improved mitochondrial function and extended lifespan. In humans, the supplementation has shown evidence of improving mitochondrial biomarkers in muscle tissue specifically, which we'll get into. And the impact of all of this is that by clearing this dysfunctional mitochondria, it can reduce the production of a reactive oxygen species, which is one of the key things that creates cellular damage. Mitophagy is going to be mediated by urolithin A to help maintain this mitochondrial efficiency, supporting energy levels. So now let's get into how it can enhance mitochondrial biogenesis. So it ultimately is going to promote this by activating the PGC1 alpha receptor, which is going to drive the expression of nuclear and mitochondrial genes required for the synthesis of new mitochondria. So essentially, it is enhancing the DNA replication and the production of respiratory chain proteins, ensuring that these newly formed mitochondria are functional. So there's some studies that show that supplementation can increase the markers of mitochondrial biogenesis, such as NRF1 and NRF2, and mitochondrial transcription factor ATFAM, which is in muscle tissues and cells. And the impact of this is that we can have enhanced mitochondrial biogenesis, which is going to replace this mitochondrial pool, ensuring there's a good balance of removal and then also replacement. And it can contribute, of course, therefore, to better energy production, particularly in aging individuals where our mitochondrial turnover is going to slow down. So how does urolithin A reduce inflammation? It does this by lowering oxidative stress through its mitophagy promoting effects. So ultimately, by removing this damaged mitochondria, it's going to prevent the release of inflammatory signals like mitochondrial DNA and ROS, the reactive oxygen species, that activate pathways like the NLRP3 inflammasome. It's also going to directly modulate inflammatory pathways by decreasing pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin beta and TNF alpha. So in preclinical models, it's been shown to reduce markers of systemic inflammation and improve muscle recovery by mitigating some of this inflammation-induced damage. In some of the human trials, it's reported reductions in inflammation-related biomarkers in individuals taking supplements. So the impact of this is that the anti-inflammatory effect can protect tissues from this chronic low-grade inflammation that so many people experience, which is a hallmark sign of aging, and it supports recovery in physically active and aging individuals. And lastly, let's discuss its potential epigenetic effects. So it may influence epigenetic regulation through its impact on cellular energy and mitochondrial function. It can increase NAD levels via enhanced mitochondrial efficiency. It can activate sirtuins, and these enzymes are going to modulate gene expression related to energy metabolism, stress resilience, and aging. So it can also indirectly affect the histone modification and DNA methylation by reducing oxidative stress and maintaining mitochondrial health. So the evidence right now suggests that the direct epigenetic effects of urolithin A are still under investigation, But its upstream regulation of PGC1 alpha and sirtuin suggests that there is a potential epigenetic modulation. And some of the preliminary studies suggest that it influences gene networks that involve cellular repair, energy metabolism, and longevity. So ultimately, the impact of this is that it supports activation of genes that enhance cellular resilience and longevity, and potentially slowing down age-related decline. So if we look here is a quick summary of its potential effects from mitophagy, how the mechanism of that, which is activating the PINK1 and Parkin pathway to clear damaged mitochondria, and that can reduce reactive oxygen species and enhance cellular health. As it relates to mitochondrial biogenesis, it can upregulate the PGC1 alpha, NRF1, and TFAM to create new mitochondria, and it can improve our energy production and resilience. Inflammation reduction, it can lower ROS and inflammatory cytokines by protecting tissues and supporting recovery. And then lastly is the epigenetic regulation, which we just reviewed, which is activating sirtuins and improving mitochondrial efficiency, which can ultimately enhance longevity and cellular repair. So what is the role of the gut microbiome? So ultimately, the conversion of urolithin A depends on specific bacteria. This can be Firmicutes, Clostridium, and Gordonobacter. So actually only about 30 to 40% of people produce urolithin A naturally. So this is where supplementation can be extremely valuable for some. And functional testing, although we still have a ways to go, can help us to provide very specific personalized interventions. So as it relates to some of the evidence, one of the studies was considered the Atlas trial, and this ultimately improved VO2 max, muscle strength, endurance, and reduced inflammation, influencing these mitochondrial health biomarkers, improving muscle function. So we'll kind of go through some of the key details of this. So the objective of the study was to evaluate the impact of urolithin A supplementation on mitochondrial health, muscle strength, endurance, and systemic inflammation in healthy but sedentary adults, including older individuals experiencing age-related decline in physical function. So it was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. There was 88 sedentary adults, ages 40 to 64. The intervention was daily supplementation with either 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams of urolithin A by MitoPure or a placebo for 4 months. So the outcomes they were looking at were muscle strength, exercise performance, including VO2 max and a 6-minute walk test, as well as specific biomarkers for mitochondrial health and inflammation. So the key findings is that the participants receiving 500 milligrams of urolithin A daily exhibited a 12% increase in hamstring muscle strength compared to baseline. Those receiving 1,000 milligrams showed a 10% increase in hamstring strength. And the placebo group experienced a decline in muscle strength over the same period. As it relates to exercise performance, the 1,000 milligram urolithin A group demonstrated a 10% increase in peak oxygen consumption, so VO2 max testing, indicating an enhanced aerobic capacity. This group also showed a 33-meter improvement in the 6-minute walk test, reflecting better physical performance. As it relates to mitochondrial health, supplementation in both groups with urolithin A led to improvements in biomarkers associated with mitochondrial function, suggesting that enhanced cellular energy production. And as it relates to inflammation, the markers of an inflammation like C-reactive protein were reduced in participants taking the urolithin A, indicating potential anti-inflammatory effects. And the safety and efficacy was found to be safe and well tolerated, and no significant events were reported. When we break out the mitochondrial aspect, so as it relates to the biogenesis, participants receiving the urolithin A showed an increase in PGC1 alpha expression, and also an upregulation of NRF1 was observed. As it relates to the citrate synthase activity, there was a significant increase here in both urolithin A groups, and that reflects an enhanced mitochondrial density and efficiency. And also muscle biopsies revealed an elevation in ATP levels, indicating improved cellular energy production. And then as it relates to more systemic markers, NAD levels were increased, and also there was a decrease in the lactate to pyruvate ratio. So that also is going to suggest that there was improved mitochondrial efficiency in energy production. So how can we translate some of this research into practice? Ultimately, our target populations for this can be elderly with mitochondrial decline. It can be athletes that are seeking enhanced recovery and performance. Also, patients with known mitochondrial dysfunction, things like chronic fatigue, sarcopenia, chronic inflammation. And we can use an integrative approach using dietary precursors, gut health optimization, and also personalized interventions based on testing for urolithin A production. So when we're utilizing this into practice, we want to recognize that it is very difficult to specifically test for urolithin A at this point, although that may improve. So we want to be looking at mitochondrial health in our aging patients. We want to be evaluating our gut microbiome diversity for the urolithin A production potential, and then also exploring the synergy with other mitochondrial supportive strategies like CoQ10, magnesium, and NAC, and so much more. So when we're looking at GI testing, this can be extremely valuable in helping us understand the gut microbiome's role in the production of urolithin A. However, most of the stool tests do not directly measure this specific bacteria that's associated with it, but we can infer so much from the stool testing. So if we're thinking, for example, the GI map, it does, again, not directly assess urolithin A, but it provides a lot of actionable insights. So first, just looking at overall microbial balance. So if there's low levels of beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, this can definitely suggest a need to improve the microbial diversity through prebiotics, probiotics, and dietary phenols. If there's dysbiosis, so an overgrowth of this opportunistic bacteria, such as Clostridium or Klebsiella, this may inhibit the beneficial bacterial activity and therefore the alagatonin metabolism. And then also inflammatory markers. So if we have elevated calprotectin, elevated secretory IgA, this can indicate that there's a lot of inflammation or immune dysregulation in the gut that can ultimately comprise gut diversity. So when we look a little bit more specifically, we can also look at short chain fatty acids. So this might help us to infer whether the gut environment supports healthy metabolism. We can look at beta-glucuronidase. So elevated levels of this may indicate dysbiosis or imbalances that interfere with gut metabolism. We can also look at, again, those specific inflammatory markers like calprotectin, secretory IgA, even anti-gliadinin antibodies. So even if there is a sensitivity to gluten, this can contribute to this increased inflammation in the microbiome. And then these opportunistic bacteria, and as well as even pathogens, this can interfere with the urolithin A metabolism by disrupting the gut homeostasis. Additionally, what we're seeing is that if there is a lower Firmicutes, which is Firmicutes and Bacteroides is about 30% of the microbiome, then if there's low Firmicutes, this can also be associated with poor urolithin A metabolism. So I'd love to just take you through a quick case. So this is a 65-year-old female who was presenting with age-related fatigue, muscle weakness, and difficulty recovering from exercise. So she was reporting a history of GI issues, bloating, some occasional constipation, decreased physical endurance over the past 5 years. She would try to walk and she would just feel really tired and lethargic afterwards. She does maintain a balanced diet with some polyphenol-rich foods like berries and nuts, minimal exercise, and also regular stress management practices. So her primary complaints were persistent fatigue, reduced muscle strength, and slower post-exercise recovery. And her secondary complaints, which seemed to be more than just secondary, mild cognitive fog and difficulty maintaining energy levels. So as it relates to some of our findings, the clinical observations suggest a declining mitochondrial efficiency, possibly related to aging and reduced mitophagy. But we also looked at her stool test and we saw that she had moderate gut dysbiosis. She had very poor diversity. She also had an elevated secretory IgA, and she also had elevated beta-glucuronidase. as well as antibodies to gluten. So there's quite a bit that was going on in her gut microbiome. She also had slight deficiencies in magnesium and CoQ10, and those are, as we know, both critical for mitochondrial function. As it relates to biomarker testing, serum-wise, she had elevated inflammatory markers, so CRP and interleukin 6. So what we did as an intervention is we began to slowly increase her intake of ellagicanin-rich foods like pomegranate juice. And I also had her include more walnuts and raspberries. We added some prebiotics, so inulin, and also a broad spectrum probiotic to begin to enhance the microbial diversity. We also, of course, addressed her stool test in a phased approach. So really addressing everything from eliminating the gluten to optimizing her overall diversity and decreasing inflammation in the gut. And then we also did a Urolithin A supplement. So we used the Timeline MitoPure, which is the standard dose of 500 milligrams per day to bypass these microbiome limitations. And we also included CoQ10 and magnesium glycinate. And of course, we also implemented some lifestyle interventions. So gentle resistance training twice a week, that is going to help to stimulate this muscle adaptation. And one of the best things we can do for our mitochondria. We also began to increase her walking and including daily breath work and vagus nerve stimulation to support her overall autonomic nervous system and help reduce inflammation. And so she had a significant improvement in reported energy within 3 weeks of supplementation. Her fatigue reduced by 50% as measured by a validated fatigue severity scale. And after about 2 months, it reported improved recovery time, regained the ability to do her daily walks without feeling drained. And again, she was able to implement the strength training. Her inflammatory markers for CRP, interleukin 6, decreased within a normal range at the 3-month follow-up. And she also reported clearer thinking and improved focus. So with that said, it was a really great example of being able to integrate all of the different aspects of Urolithin A production and how it can ultimately influence mitochondrial function. So some of our key takeaways are that Urolithin A supplementation can effectively bypass the gut microbiome limitations. So even though we only have that 30 to 40% that are able to produce it, we can really address a greater population, offering a more direct pathway to improved mitochondrial function and muscle health. We can also personalize this based on GI testing and beginning to understand a little bit more about microbial diversity and optimizing microbiome health to support this, whether or not we are influencing this through food and or supplementation. And you can see with my patient that I actually integrated both. So I've really focused on integrating the food component as well as the supplement aspect. And with that said, that can really be that synergistic approach of pairing this with lifestyle dietary strategies that can ultimately amplify your patient's results. So there are some limitations. So there's variability in some natural production of it, as I just mentioned. We still need more diverse long-term studies, but at this point, this is growing rapidly. Again, there's already 500 studies on this, and it continues to expand. We still need to get more precise testing, and I think ways for us to be able to assess our own levels. Are we able to make it? I think that will be extremely helpful. And also, I think some of the future research can be in the areas of epigenetics, also the application to neurodegeneration and metabolic disorders. So ultimately, I do believe that Urolithin A bridges the gap between gut health and mitochondrial longevity. I can support mitophagy and cellular energy. It's backed by clinical evidence, and it can integrate seamlessly into functional medicine frameworks. I have started to use this with my patients as well as myself, and I'm really excited to share with you all of the information on this. So I hope that you found this helpful today. If you did, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this on root cause medicine.
Welcome to Rupa Health, the best place to order, manage, and track results from over 30 different lab companies in one single place for free. It's going to take you under 2 minutes to sign up, and you can order any functional medicine lab for your client in under 30 seconds. Let me show you how it's done. So here's our beautiful interface. I'm typing in the name of my client, selecting the lab they want to order for them, and hitting send. From there, Rupa and their amazing team handle the rest. They email the client, collect payment, and even offer an interest-free 3-month payment plan. We've also built the world's largest library of information about chronic health conditions, the lab tests that can help you find the root cause, and the evidence-based interventions that you can use to help people heal from them. It's called the Rupa Health magazine. There, we have in-depth articles about almost any health condition you can imagine. And we give you step-by-step protocols that other clinicians have used to help their clients heal and that are verified by evidence-based sources. You should totally check it out, and it'll transform your practice. And we can't wait to see you. So make sure you sign up today at rupahealth.com.